Hey, you said the other day, Mike, about your feelings about tackling at camp. How, I know, do you weigh it with the veteran team, and how do you think about maybe installing physicality if you don't tackle in camp, or the game to take care of?
Yeah, I think there's so much to football. I think when you have a definition of having a physical camp, I have great confidence of let's just get to the end of camp and you can grade my camp. So, I've tackled before in camp. It's a risk assessment decision. The fundamentals of tackling, we work every day, so I have confidence in that. I mean, the option of tackling in goal line, it's always a conversation. There's years I've done it, there's years I haven't done it. It's a hard drill to do. I think it was Mark brought it up yesterday. So that's part of it. But there's so much more that we can do in that area to emphasize that. The long stride, short stride, the specifics of how the fundamentals are being taught to the approach, the strike, the wrap, the finish. So these are constants that are taught throughout our whole team. Defense, obviously special teams, and our offensive players that play special teams. So it's a primary fundamental. We call it the Steeler Six. We have 6 fundamentals of Steeler football that we emphasize. Obviously, tackling and breaking tackles is one of those 6. So those 6 fundamentals are emphasized daily. We have a period just for team fundamentals to emphasize that. So, doing it for a long time, I have great confidence. And frankly, evaluating the team last year, I think that's definitely, I would say, is an asset, moving forward. So it is a veteran team, but we have preseason games too, so that's always part of it, who plays in preseason, who doesn't. So, I mean, all those things are discussed, and I think that's why I'll continue to say there's a systematic approach to everything we do. We have a plan, but the plan has proactive adjustments that gives us in a systematic mindset.
Can you share the other 5?
Huh?
Can you share the other 5?
Yeah, ball security, obviously taking care of it, extracting it. Ball security is number 1. Blocking, obviously sustain it, break, and obviously getting off blocks. We've already hit tackling. About big plays is the fundamentals. You can't win in the National Football League without big plays. There's, each game, if you look at the league average, the average is about 36 a game. So you got to emphasize it. The finish, the pursuit and finish, is clearly a big part of that too. And one that we, spend a lot of time in, particularly because the way we have to train more than ever in the off season, is the mannerisms. Mannerisms in disguise is a big part of pro football. I think it's particularly coming from the quarterback position. My history, you spend time there, but the game's evolved that way. Where both sides of the ball are doing it a lot more. You're even seeing it more in special teams. So those are the 6, fundamentals of Steeler football.
On the tackling end,
Yes.
was any part of evaluating the team in last season and what you saw and any missed tackles that showed up that went into your decision to not have live tackling this year? Like any concern about rust opening?
There wasn't anything from this end of season evaluation that affected the way we train in the team today. It's a clean slate for everybody, coaches and players. The teaching environment that you want to create, I feel good about it. We're off to a good start. I think we hit the target in the spring. We're doing some things here in camp that we have a talk through, a walkthrough type thing in the gymnasium. So that's been very productive the last 2 days. So the teaching environment is clearly there, and then the competitive nature of the practice environment will only improve. Obviously we're in shells and protective shirts again today. We're on the clock. We'll emphasize 2 minute again today. You'll see you'll see the 2 minute team go today. We're still hitting the end of the game. Talked on that yesterday. We got some end of the game things we're looking at, just because finishing the install coming out of spring, and we'll always have our fundamental sections and so forth. So we're working in accordance to the the CBA. We like everybody, and I think practicing and helmets and shirts, you can emphasize things more on the perimeter. Ball in space and those types of things, and that's what we're doing.
Like with that 2 minute emphasis at the end of practice yesterday, the period was, you got 4 seconds, different down and distances, starting points. Just what's kind of your methodology behind that, and what do guys kind of gain out of some of that chaotic preparedness and going through those plays?
Well, a big part of the game of football is, the understanding of time clocks, and particularly when you talk about the 2-minute situation. I mean, if you look at a 17-game season, and really the numbers haven't moved a whole lot in my time in the league, on an average of, 17 games, 8 games a year on an average will come down to the last series. You look at play of football, almost, it's probably even closer to 95% of the games come down to the last series. So those are the things I look at. So when I'm putting together a training regiment, so the opportunity to win games, we're the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to get everybody's best shot. So maybe ours will be 10, 11. So that's how I evaluate it. That's how when I look at the training, how we're going to set up the practices, the reps, the quarterback school. Obviously, I think we all start somewhere as coaches. My starting point was, the quarterback room. So I trained the team in a lot of ways. How I learned the training of the quarterback position, and I think then you take it down in either further into the science of what every play represents. Like today, one of the emphasis in the team meeting today was the anatomy of a play. And the pre-snap is the first part of a play. So everything that goes on in the pre-snap up until the ball snap, the specifics, the mannerism, the skies. That's why it's a fundamental. The cadence, the substitution patterns. The ability to get this personnel in quickly in the red zone. So you have to practice all those little things now because it's going to show up in preseason games. It's going to show up when you get out there for the first time with a 90-man roster. So you got the pre-snap, but then as you watch film, you study the film, you'll see in the first 2.3 seconds. That's really the execution battleground. That's where really the play gets established in the first 2.3. So that's another time block. So, and then above 2.3, 2.5, now you get into extended play. Okay, so now we're talking about extended plays, which is what? Big plays, big play opportunities, which is another Steeler fundamental. So that's the way my brain works. That's the way I've learned it through the eyes of a quarterback in my time in this league, and that's the way we train our team. So all our situational emphasis, really is broken down every specific play and how we can train in those little segments and hopefully, as I express this, hopefully you see that in our practice structure.
Mike, it seemed like you had a pretty
Mike,
aggressive.
it
seemed like you had a pretty aggressive cadence in terms of how the plays get called at practice. How did you come to that, and can you push that too far, where going too fast loses some things in some other areas?
Well, everything's calculated, everything's regulated. So there's obviously science behind it. We're in tune with the conditioning of our players. The commitment the players made in the spring was evident. And I like what I've seen so far, what they've done away from here, particularly the men that got together in their individual groups. So my point is, it's showing up. So this is all by design. There's history behind it. So we're learning each other's. Everybody has a genetic background that you pay attention to. Some guys can rev higher than others, and so this is part of the process. We meet on it daily, so we're aware of that. And but yeah, it's clearly by design because you go back to what I just talked about, the pre-snap. We need to. Everybody talks about the physical and the mental. Stress of a physical camp. Well, what the hell about the nervous system? Who's training that? How you tapping that? How you pushing that? Where you getting that at? Where's the mental toughness? Where's the emotional toughness? How do you train that on a football field? So this is all by design. I mean, and like I said, a lot of my ideas, a lot of my approaches, the systematic things really comes from the days as a quarterback coach.
Mike,
I
it's
know
more.
it's early on, but
Do more.
I know it's early on. In general, after day one, what did you see that you liked? What did you see that you didn't like?
After one practice, we were on time, and we finished on time. So we're in compliance with the CBA rules. I said it with total sarcasm. I think that the big thing there was I like the way they came out of the meetings. They came out of the talk through. You can see they were sharp. Now the execution part, we got a ton of work to do. I mean that's what training camp looks like. And then when we get pads next week, pads are not going to be consistently low enough. And so I mean we look like a normal starting day. I really was trying to watch the individual players, particularly in the fundamental work. That's usually where my eyes go. To see if they're closing that gap with the veterans. So, but I thought we got off to a nice start.
Mike, it's been
Last
about,
one.
it's been about 8 years since you've last coached Aaron. What's it been like getting reacclimated with him, and how do you feel like either both you and him have changed and evolved over those 8 years?
It's been fun. I mean, you know, personally, it's been awesome. But you know, the big thing is really for him and I is how we're connected and engaged with everybody else. You know, I'm not as concerned about being on the same page with Aaron. It's make sure the whole group's connected. You know, conversations that you know him and I have are on the level of a coach. You know, leadership level coach. So as far as how we want to play, you know, getting connected to the particular young guys in the perimeter, you know, I feel really good about what he's already has established with the offensive line and the tight ends. You can see that, you know, obviously him and DK, I thought they showed some big time things, you know, just in the OTAs. So, but it's really the younger guys, and frankly, we got a new coaching staff. So I mean, you know, he's worked with some of those guys, and you can see the relationship with James Campen and the guys he's worked with before. But just getting that all connected, just because, you know, once again, we want to be a master of our offense, you know, and play the right way. We don't want to be jack of all trades and try to, you know, run a little bit of this, run a little bit of that. You know, he knows me, and I feel he thinks the same way. It's got to fit together. It's got to line up. At the end of the day, every offense I've ever coordinated, and it'll never change. It's built around making the quarterback successful, and that's the design of it. No one knows it better than he does, and we just got to make sure we get that thing lined up and get the reps.
All right, thanks, Coach.
All right, thank you.